ENCORE friends! Welcome to Finger Swagger, your home training series for string players. I am Jinjoo Cho, the Artistic Director of ENCORE Chamber Music Institute and your instructor today. The easiest way to make sure these episodes keep coming is for you to subscribe, comment, and set your alarms to our channel. Today, we're starting a 30-day challenge of conquering shifts. All of the violin masters and pedagogues agree that shifts, especially downward shifts, are the biggest technical challenges of violin playing, and we all need to work on it constantly. Like, trust me. They are definitely challenging for me as well. My experience is that I could be in a great shape 1 week, and then as soon as I have less time to practice for another, the sensation for shifting is out the window. I mean, it's so unfair. Shouldn't I get it by now? I've been playing the goddamn instrument for like almost 30 years.
No.
Whatever. So, I'll be doing this challenge with you as we release 4 weeks of material for conquering your shifts. This is your summer to stop crying over shifts. I'm especially hoping to improve my left hand's accuracy and sensitivity with this challenge beyond what I've done previously. So I've decided to venture into the world of violin pedagogue I am the least familiar with, D.C Dounis. I learned most of my technique from studying Sevcik and Shadiak, so like a real SS girl here. Dounis exercises are kind of foreign to me, but many of my colleagues, both performing and teaching, swear by them, so I decided to really check them out. His background was actually medicine, and he had a deep understanding of anatomy, neurology, and psychiatry as he helped injured musicians as a career. I mean, these methods really work, and I'm starting to see a big difference. So I wanted to invite you guys to go through this journey with me, because why would I suffer alone? For those of you who are teachers, we all know that Dounis's famous book, The Artist Technique, is quite tricky to teach because young students have a hard time even playing through them because of their difficulty. So we're going to go from the very basics today. These videos should be able to give you ideas to help guide your students to go from one stage of shifting to another. If you have specific questions or feedback, I would love to hear from you. Please share your thoughts on the comment section below. The comment section is really an open forum for all of us. Today's episode, we're not going to actually do shifts today because attaining the inner balance is the key to movement. So think of this episode as a vital precursor to what's ahead. Have ready on your stand this book. As usual, I'm only using books that are available freely online on IMSLP. So if you don't own these books, they're available and you don't have to worry about it. If you want to invest in hard copies, there's a collection of Dounis exercises, and I think it's a worthy investment. And here is today's routine. All right, let's get started. So I love that this book is called The Fundamental Technical Studies on a Scientific Basis for the Young Violinist. I'm young, so it's okay. It works so well for those of us who are not so familiar with the Dounis methods. He explains a little bit more fully what his ideas are, so I think it's incredibly helpful to go from this book into the Artist Technique book. So he says, the student should be accustomed from the very beginning of his studies to think each movement before making it. He must have a distinct picture of each physical movement reflected in the brain before he makes it actual. First, the mental factor which conceives the movement, the nervous factor which transmits the movement to the muscle, and the muscular factor which performs the movement. So he says the purpose of practice is to coordinate the mental, nervous, and the muscular factors to such a degree that we can do them really fast. We always focus so much on the physique and our facility, and he really emphasizes the fact that we need to be able to visualize it in order for us to transmit and execute. And then he emphasizes at the very end of these directions to think before playing. Visualize the correct movement required, and only then proceed to the actual playing of it. Having a mirror in front of you, at least in the very beginning stages, would be incredibly helpful. Now we're gonna go into the very first section of this book, and he finally starts talking about the feeling of balance. It says, the main objective of the young violinist, as far as the left hand is concerned, should be to acquire the feeling of balance between the fingers. Now, in the Pinky Swagger, we talked about having a great frame for the whole hand rather than just trying to stretch the fourth finger and breaking the entire frame of the hand. And it's similar talk, but I think by using these specific vocabularies, like the feeling of balance, I think he really sends a message to the brain that we somehow need to create an equilibrium between strength and flexibility. At least for me, that was sort of the natural reaction when I read these words. It has been incredibly helpful because when we think about the word frame, it's easy for us to think only about this front part of the hand. But when we talk about the feeling of balance, in a way, we think about the entire inner sensation of the hand. And for me, it was especially helpful to think about the balance between the four fingers and the thumb here. So in order for us to execute correctly these methods and these exercises, we're gonna make sure that we're gonna concentrate as much as possible on keeping this feeling of balance today. So bear that in mind, and I will remind you as we go along. The first is the very beginning of the book. We're gonna do number 1 and number 5. I've chosen these because I think they deal with the most difficult movements. These exercises are not necessarily difficult. They're easy to read, sight readable, but I think they're a great introduction to attaining this feeling of balance, especially if you've never played violin this way. If you are unfamiliar with the concept, I think it could be hugely appreciated. So let's go. So I'm going to put the metronome at 60, and here we go. If you're like me, it takes a lot of concentration to keep this shape. What it feels like to me is almost like keeping a pebble between my fingers constantly and holding an egg at the same time in the left hand. And somehow it makes me feel very like elevated from the violin and then free but also restricted at the same time. It's such a weird feeling. But I'm really loving the way that it helps my tone and the constancy of my vibrato. Also, it makes a difference in the way you hold the violin. Since I've started the Dounis exercises, I've found myself holding the violin a little bit higher actually. It's been feeling a lot more light, for the lack of a better word. To be continued. Now let's go into number 5 in the same set.
probably noticed that I'm losing the sense of balance sometimes, but just please excuse me. It's a new journey for me as well. What I've noticed is that if I think about the left hand too much and start to tense my head towards the left hand, I'm less likely to be successful. It's better to keep relaxed and kind of not even look at it so much, but really visualize the action. I've been practicing with the mirror this whole week, so it's helpful for me to visualize that action and then actually just trust the picture in my mind to execute these actions. Okay, let's go into the second section. So this second section is really where the genius of Dounis shows up. Violin teachers who are teaching young students, I think this would be such a great introduction to doing long tones. Really cultivate from an early age to have this feeling of balance. I couldn't imagine knowing this and practicing this with an intellectual supporting the natural. It would be really amazing to do that. So the group 2 focuses on all the different patterns of whole steps and half steps. So it would be beneficial to do this in all positions actually, but he's written it down only for the first position. So we're gonna only cover first position, but if you have time or if you'd like to, go into the second position, third position, onward and upward. I've developed my own routine of this. So like violin teachers, you can take this or leave it. I've decided to do these as a whole note and then again with half notes and then with quarters with 2 slurs and then as eighths with 4 slur. So I'm gonna hold one note for a whole note and then go through the whole G string system and then do half note, the whole G string system, quarter G string system, eighth note G string system, and then repeat for D string, A string, and E string. Here we go. Metronome is still at 60. Still vibrating. Remember to keep the form parallel to the string, vibrating, keeping the feeling of balance. We're going to do exactly the same thing with D string. Make sure that the elbow position, the arm position is supporting this balance. Sometimes students kind of stay here and then they try to attain the balance, so they injure their shoulder greatly, and that's not to be advised. Of course, who advises injury? Stupid poo-poo head. Okay, D string. D string, as we talked about again in the pinky swagger, is more of a neutral position with a little bit of forward elbow. 1, 2, whole tone. Try not to break the feeling of balance when you're on the move like this from finger to finger. Oh, it's so tempting. note for quarter bow. Now half. Bow speed is faster. Just 4 notes. First position. So difficult, mentally and physically. I think it's challenging. Okay, we're gonna do A string. A string, elbow position is neutral. Remember, keep reminding yourself to keep the shoulders relaxed to avoid injury and, again, to attain and cultivate the feeling of balance. Again, like 2 to 3 is so difficult for me, but I'm gonna keep going with this. Okay, whole note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Distribute your bow well. Now half notes. It's really not about how it looks. So many students and young violinists obsess over what your hand looks like. It's not about how it looks, although it can be a good indication of what's going on internally, but it's always about how it feels. You should be more interested in how the hands are used. And it goes the same for when you're observing great players. Don't just look at the visual. Imagine what would be going on inside their bodies. Like, how would they be feeling the bow? How would they be feeling the violin? What does that feel like to that person? Try to have a sense of imagination, even for technical studies. Okay, E string, whole notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Careful with the first finger. Not doing a very good job, but I'm trying. E string is the most difficult for me. And half notes. first finger keeps crashing, especially when it goes from 1 to 2. It's so hard for me to kind of keep that shape because it wants to really extend back. It's always 1. 1 is stupid. Okay, now we're going into group 2. They're all whole notes, same system. We're going to do whole notes, half notes, quarters, and eighths. It's going to be done in a second. Still at 60. And then go back. Keep checking the balance. Not perfect, but I'm trying. Half notes. to do it with you today, but you can do the group 3 exactly the same way, going up in the G string one and then coming back down, or you can just do it exactly the way it's written. But I really like the idea of incorporating these exercises with long tones because it promotes so much more than left hand. It makes us feel big and it helps us to feel different strokes while we're trying to attain the balance. So I think it can be used in many different ways. Okay, now is the last section of these 2 pages, and I think it's the most genius. I had never thought about this before. In the section coming up, he talks about how every position should be practiced with different spacings of the fingers. One is lower position. If the natural position is here, the lower position is starting with A flat. And of course, you know, the hand would scale down just slightly, right? Natural position again. And then higher position would be with a sharp. So to differentiate these 3 different framework within one position, I think is really incredible. And it could be especially helpful for repertoire that we have to do a lot of extensions and distortion of the hand like Paganini and Bach, because then we can easily identify, oh, which position is this note and is that natural? Oh, I'm trying to do higher position and natural position together, and that's why that's difficult. It's like possible to analyze a chord and figure out what your hand should be looking like and feeling like, which I think is genius. It's like just connecting the mind and body to a whole different level. So I think this one is really cool. If you don't want to do them for learning, do them for the coolness of them. We're gonna do them at quarter, still at 60, quarter, 8ths with 4 slur, and 16ths with 16 slur. So let's try it. G string first, D string, A string, and E string. I'm going to do them consecutively. Go back down. So cool. It's like chromatic for the whole frame. Okay, D string. Quarter first. I forgot to tell you to go back down. I keep forgetting to remind you guys to do that. But I'm telling you as I do it. Okay, D string. 2, 3, 4. Quarters. Keep the balance. A little bit higher. Go back down. Scale back a little bit. Keep the balance. 8. in the same position, try not to move your thumb too much. If you're moving the thumb, then too many of the variables are changing. So I'm not sure if it would be too effective. So keep in mind that we're going from the same position, which is a natural position, and then practicing to go a little bit lower and then a little bit higher, and practicing to basically notice a difference between these three positions within a position. All right, so we're gonna go into the last exercise of the routine. Number 7 is the most difficult out of the section 2 exercises. It's also the most fun because it deals with a lot of lateral movements, which Dounis says is the key to attaining individuality in each of the fingers. So we're gonna do exactly the same thing. Stay at 60. These are 16 notes. No rhythmic variations, just as it is. Repeat twice each line. And here we go. Lots of concentration for this one because it's moving laterally like this, each finger, and then still retaining the balance. I don't know about you guys. My brain is gonna explode a little bit. Okay, balance, balance, balance. Keeping the balance inside. Pebbles and egg. Pebbles and an egg. 3 pebbles. 1, 2, 3. And an egg. Inside. 1, 2, 3. Why is E string so difficult? Today's routine is over. Over. Yes, 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 yes.
Yay! We're finished with week 1 routine. How did it feel? Next week, we will deal with small shifts while keeping the principles we learned today. Try mastering the exercises from this routine this week. In addition to these exercises, stay aware of the feeling of balance with your repertoire practice as well. For example, if you're struggling with intonation in certain shifts, keeping this feeling of balance while in movement, you will notice a big difference in its efficiency. It's not the most natural feeling, but it's a skill that must be cultivated, so keep reminding yourself. I hope this episode was helpful to you. We have a great selection of live performances and classes on our channel, and much to come later as well. So check it out, subscribe to our channel, and leave us lots of comments about what you'd like to see next. We read every feedback and we'll follow up with you. All right, see you next week. Bye.